Hello, everybody. My name's Thomas, and I'm going to be going over 6 things to help improve your ELL students' vocabulary. Now, you may be asking, why am I qualified to do this? Well, I've been teaching internationally for the past 8 years, all of it in China, so my students are all ELL students. And they face some different difficulties. And the reason that it's important is because vocabulary, according to Brooks et al., is has the strongest correlation to participants' reading comprehension when compared to factors such as fluency or word decoding. This means that this is the most important thing for helping students understand. And regardless of where you're at, usually when you have an ELL student that is learning English as their second language, they're missing one of 3 things, at least one of 3 things. And McKean and Riley go through this, but they say that it's usually the family, the community, or their surroundings in other situations. So they argue that the stakeholders outside of the school should be working on vocabulary just as much as we should be in the school. So when you think about it, second language users, their family, or that means that their family probably speaks a different language at home. So they're missing that component. They're not able to expand their vocabulary naturally. In my situation where I'm teaching in China, nobody in the community uses English as their primary mode of communication. They use Chinese. So they're missing that area. And then others, we only get the kids for 2 hours at my current school. In 2 hours, we're expected to get the kids above or at American fluency levels. We are able to accomplish it mostly with the high achieving kids, but that means that they don't get the extra benefit of sports, of science, of art being in English. They have to go through and they have to learn all of this separately, and that makes it much, much more difficult. So these 6 things are to help bridge some of that gap. How can we utilize our time more effectively in school and some of it outside of school for the kids, giving them options to utilize that time more effectively to build their vocabulary more naturally and quickly. So without further ado, let's get into number 1. The first thing that I want to go over is extensive reading. It has been shown by Strong to boost vocabulary acquisition by itself. It found that students were able to better understand the words after the first time seeing them used in context. That doesn't mean that they were actively better, but they had a passive understanding. They could kind of figure it out. And students weren't actively better with the word until they've read the word 5 to 8 times. He also found out during that study that passive reading helped more with nouns and active reading helped more with verbs. So we're going to go into extensive reading a little bit and explain what it is, and then what are passive and active reading. So the first thing is, extensive reading is just reading outside of this classroom. Reading more, and more. How do we promote that? So the first thing I'm going to talk about is active reading, because it's a little bit different. Reading actively means that you are reading with a purpose. You're searching for something. You have an idea that you need to follow through with. And there's lots of programs that can help you do this. The traditional way is asking questions to kids about the books that they read. There are reading programs at home that you can send to the kids, or your district probably already purchases. One of them that my district purchased when I was very, very young was the Accelerated Reader Program. I loved that program. It allowed me to read books. I got points for the books that I read, and then I got rewards for those points. That's not the only way that it works, but that worked great for me. Another program is Raz Kids. This is specifically targeted at K through 5 students in the US. So if your kids are a little bit weaker, this could still be a very good resource. It is almost predominantly focused on younger material and getting the kids on both nonfiction and fictional books. This is big because the next one, Achieve 3000, is focused almost primarily on nonfiction. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, because Achieve 3000 does something a little bit different. It allows students to go K through 12. and build, and it quizzes them and unlocks more books and gives them more opportunities as you go. That's why these 3 programs are really good. The last one is ReadWorks. ReadWorks is for you as a teacher. It allows you to assign a lot more work that is scaffolded. And that scaffolding allows you to build your students' class or your students step by step yourself. It's not as automatic. It takes a lot more work by the teacher, but the information in them can be a lot more dense, and it offers scaffolded materials of the same text, which can be very, very beneficial if you want to use it in the classroom. All of those programs are to promote active reading, and it gives kids the ability to access those books at home. That's the huge thing. Having access to those books at home is phenomenal. By giving them that opportunity, you're upping those chances that you're going to build that extensive reading idea, that extensive reading ability. That is something I cannot understate enough. Those programs are seriously phenomenal. The big problem with them, at least with Raz Kids, Achieve 3000, and ReadWorks, is that you cannot use physical books with them. They are all online. Accelerated Reader is a little bit different. That one, you can use them either online, the kids will have access to it if you give them access to it, or they can actually check out the physical books, and then they can take the quizzes afterwards with the physical books. They have a wide range of books that they have quizzes for, but it is a little more nebulous. You don't get to see and track as much of the data as you do through Raz Kids and Achieve 3000. For passive reading, that's when you want the kids to read on their own and they're reading more for fun. This is enjoyment. And there's a couple different things that I think really help with passive reading. And one is designing a reading corner. A reading corner in your classroom gives the kids a space where they can go read. It's a quiet area. Generally, it's got a carpet or maybe some couches or chairs, a little bit of an area that just is a little nook that's for them to relax and read quietly. Another good idea is just chunk reading into smaller time frames. A lot of us do reading of core books or books in class or readings in class as 40-minute chunks or whatever our period length is. I do 40 minutes, 10-minute break, 40 minutes. That's a lot of reading, and that tends to destroy both active and passive reading if you push the kids that hard and they're not ready for it. So try to chunk it into smaller time frames, break it up into questions, try to get more things going on in there. Another thing that is severely underrated and sounds like a no-duh thing when it comes to promoting passive or active reading is just having student interest available. Things like comics and graphic novels, they are still novels. They are still reading. It may sound like it's a little bit silly and we want to move kids away from that, but especially for beginner learners, those pictures help build those students. We are making them into something more. We are really showing those students why we want them to be doing these things. And then the last thing is use audiobooks and read-alouds. Now, yes, this is not directly reading, but this is giving the students that exposure to vocabulary. That's giving those students exposure to the reading structure, the grammar, the themes. And we'll build off of that a little bit. I'll show you what I mean when I say audiobooks are excellent in just a moment. So, the second thing that I want to focus on is read-alouds. Now, read-alouds don't need to just be passive. In fact, Wright et al. Suggests that books should be chosen and themed around the same points as what is being taught in other subjects. And when you use those books to guide reading and read aloud, it boosts the vocabulary acquisition. Wright found this, and then Rosinga found this when they used guided reading ideas for older students in particular. We tend to only do read-alouds to younger students, but that's not really the way that it works. So what we should be doing is reading aloud to our students instead of making them read to us all the time. We're trying to focus on more things than just fluency. We're focusing on vocabulary acquisition, we're focusing on themes, we're focusing on grammar, and then we should be giving those students things to look for. For example, in my book that I'm teaching the kids right now, we're reading Tiger Rising. What I'm having them do while I read the book aloud to them is take notes. They need to find proof about something being true. So they need to find text evidence about a claim that I make. And I show them both the claim and, if you can see here, I say, Mr. Filmer is insensitive and incompetent. So I show them that claim. That's my claim. So I need to find something that's true about him. So here, insensitive and incompetent, those are hard vocabulary words for my kids. So I tell them what it means. I explicitly tell them. Insensitive means showing little or no concern for others' feelings, and incompetent means not doing your job well. So then what do? I have the kids find proof. So we go through page 15. He was always worried about Rob doing badly at school and not communicating. Here it's a little more evidence, and then here there's more evidence yet. And this is my text evidence that I give the students. But then I give them a new claim. Rob is an introvert. Again, introvert is that hard vocabulary, so I'm explicitly teaching them what an introvert means. It's a shy, reserved person. And then I have them go through while I read the book, and they find thoughts and feelings, actions, or dialogues and words. And I have great examples of students doing this very, very well. They are actively reading this book while I am reading it to them. They are finding the information as we go. They're writing it down. They're really making excellent examples here. This first student is a high-level student. She did an amazing job. My second student is a little bit lower. He did an excellent job as well. He made a couple different claims, but he followed through with it. He showed exactly what was going on there, and he did this all with just a little bit of prompting and giving an example of what I'm looking for. So here, we're showing how you can make your read-alouds more effective. And something you might have noticed that I did during those reading alouds was I taught the vocabulary explicitly. And that's my next point, my third point. Teaching vocabulary explicitly is something that we do for younger students all the time. We focus on it. We give the kids lots and lots of opportunities to build their vocabulary. We teach them individual words. We teach them lots of words. But as they get older, we kind of start pulling back from that. We kind of let them learn through context clues. We teach them in science the big terms that we want them to know, but we kind of give a certain amount of grace in the idea of we expect the kids to kind of know these things. But that's just not always true. What we can do instead is be a little more explicit when we're teaching vocabulary. Have the kids go through and do it themselves. So Calvin and his team found that implicit instruction of vocabulary is good. That's what we've been doing when we use context clues and things like that. But it's good for short term. Explicit instruction helps long term, especially for second language learners. For older students, I recommend a flipped classroom design or incorporating it into your reading class as naturally as possible. Again, I'm going to show you how I did it with the slide above where I showed that Rob's principal, Mr. Filmer, is insensitive and incompetent, and we found this here. And then I made the claim that he's insensitive and incompetent, and I told them what that means. He's showing little or no concern for others' feelings for insensitive, incompetent. That's just directly teaching them the language. But another activity that you could do is a flipped classroom design. You give the kids all of the vocabulary that you want them to learn. You want them to learn it explicitly. You know they're going to be stumbling blocks when you go in. Again, This isn't going to be every word, but it's going to be maybe the ones that you feel are the most difficult for them. And this list should be iterative. It should get longer or shorter. You can remove or add words as you see necessary over time, but you give them this list and you have the kids go find them before you do the reading or you do the chapter, or you do the book. That will help them learn explicitly the words that they've run across throughout the books and throughout their reading. My fourth technique is going to be utilizing the first language. And the reason that I bring this up is when I first started teaching, it was emphasized to me that students should not use their native language in my class. Over time, that perception has changed. One example is Johangard that found that it was specifically helpful when teaching vocabulary. Earlier, I mentioned doing a flipped classroom assignment. This is generally how I have students do it. I have them use a flipped classroom setting, and I ask them the vocabulary in Chinese. I ask them to find the correlating words for that vocabulary. You can only do this if your language is good enough, but you can also have, if you have a TA, that also helps. If you have a TA whose language is good enough, or you're given extra resources who are more fluent than you are. You need to be able to understand the first language well enough, but it really helps the kids' understandings. When I was going through, I could get through a lot more material a lot quicker, and the kids had a better grasp of it later in the day when I would ask them, hey, what does this mean? And they would be able to tell me very quickly, oh, it means this, and they'd tell me in Chinese. Okay, great. So what does that mean in English? And they'd go, oh, well, it means this. And then they'd explain it. I was like, great, you just gave me the definition of the word in English. And they'd go, oh, like kind of surprised that they knew it because they were just translating for themselves. And that led to them learning faster. But building that connection really builds that vocabulary quickly. You can also use it for concept checking questions if your language is good enough to double check their understanding as well when you're going over vocabulary. Number 5 is morphology. And morphology is kind of a weird way to just say that we need the kids to learn their prefixes, roots, and suffixes. Savage and his team found that this was highly beneficial when used specifically with reading vocabulary. And it helps their fluency as well as just their vocabulary understanding. For beginner students, this means focusing on prefixes and suffixes. Higher ability students, though, this means we can focus on other things when it comes to morphology. Personally, when I'm teaching 4th, 5th, 6th grade, we focus a lot on Greek and Latin roots. This doesn't show in class a lot of progress very quickly. But over time, kids start to learn a lot of the words as they go, and they're more able to accurately understand a word given context clues and its formation. Last but not least is concept mapping. And all concept mapping is building connections between words. So let's say you're doing a unit on biology. You want to talk about plants. Okay, so you have flowers. You have your flowers up here, and you say, I want my kids to learn about the stamen, the pistil, the roots, the photosynthesis, the leaves. Concept mapping is building the connection between all of those things. That would be one side of your concept map. Now you've got mammals on another side, and on another side you've got amphibians, and you go through and you start building connections between all these words. It's been shown to really be beneficial for the students to write down these concept maps with different vocabulary that connects everything together. These 6 techniques are what works great for me. Extensive reading, read alouds, teaching vocabulary explicitly, utilizing the first language, morphology, and concept mapping have helped me raise my kids' scores about 3 points on average above their normal growth rate in MAP. That is nothing to shake a stick at, especially as I'm teaching in 6th grade. We tend to see smaller growth there, and adding an extra 3 points onto pretty much every kid through that growth is something I cannot say enough about. These ideas work. They're backed by studies. They've been shown to work in my class. Please give them a try. Again, if you guys would like to look at any of the data that I can provide, it is below. Unfortunately, I'm not able to provide my own kids' data because that's unpublished raw data that my school will not allow me to publish. But I do have it in my references below. But everything else, the studies that I've used, things like that, are all below. Please take a look. And if you have any questions or comments or things that work for you, please reach out to me. Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.